Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming back.
Hi.
That looks so good.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Look so pretty
Um,
tonight, Brandon.
oh, thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
I was wondering if anyone wanted to share maybe a description of what your childhood home looked like what the scene was like, the space outside, maybe some of the spaces inside. In these pages that we are discussing tonight, the author to me described the places. What stood out to me was the way that the author described the spaces that the many spaces that she and her family lived in. And I know she's writing this as an adult, but from the POV of when she was 11 or 12. And, you know, they don't seem like really happy places. They don't seem sad either. It doesn't seem like she was in extreme poverty, but and there's no alcohol or drugs, it seems to be involved. It doesn't seem horrible, but the places she's describing to me are the way that she describes some, for example, are so vivid to me. For example, the way that she describes seeing waste on the island, and how she could tell what people ate because of like it was in the waste. And then when they leave that space after Poppy comes and sees how they're living and they move, even that space she described as next to the bar, and when they would walk to school, there would be like pools of vomit everywhere. These really like really interesting things to point out about the space that you grew up at. So I was wondering if anybody felt the same about the spaces that she was describing where she grew up, but also if anyone has any vivid memories of where they grew up. I remember when I was like around this age, like I grew up in Michigan, and it's like very suburban, like cul-de-sac type of neighborhood. And I remember when I was this age, like nothing ever happened in that neighborhood. And one day, there was like a mountain lion, like on my mom's car. And it was like terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying because I remember my stepdad went and got the shotgun, and we were thinking he was gonna have to kill it. This thing was massive. And like, it looked like something like out of a movie. And we end up having to like call the ambulance. And I remember like describing the route, like describing kind of the space outside of my house, like where I lived. And I remember saying like, if you like, once you get to the Kroger, make a right, turn into Wind Charm Estates, come all the way down. There's a really big field on the side where they're building a house. Like I remember describing these things like to him. And I was like, when you come all the way down, we're going to be the first house. If you just keep driving and you don't make a left or a right, you'll run right into our driveway. Like I remember really describing him because I wanted him to come quickly and not get lost and get this like mountain lion off my mom's car. So kind of like, I guess that that vision kind of came up for me when I was reading the way Esmeralda was describing these places that she lived and the things that she remembered like at this age. I don't know, does anyone else want to chime in? Like, do you agree or disagree?
How old were you, Brandon?
Around that time, I was like her age, around the time, 12, 13 maybe.
No, but as you were talking, I was sort of thinking about, as a child, what are those things that we remember? And it's likely more of those emotions that like made us feel extreme happiness, sadness, or something that really frightened us. Otherwise, it's probably just going to be like everyday memory. But those long-term memories are probably those things that really evoked high emotions in us. Because as you were talking about the mountain lion, I could just, you were like really very descriptive, and that you knew exactly the directions you gave to get to your house. So as you were talking, I'm like, okay, so memories for a kid is probably those things that were really high level emotional events that happened to us, like really joyful, happy, or sad, or fear. That's just what I was thinking as you were speaking.
Yeah, I remember living in the Bronx and shoveling coal. Remember those days where you had to shovel coal into a boiler? And we would sneeze and it would all come out black. So, we lived in the basement area, and at times it was fun, and at times it was scary, and at times it was like just a lot of things that occurred during that time that don't happen now. Like the rag man will come and sell rags, or some kind of images were coming to me. But yeah, it's like Sherry said, it's like no mountain lions though, but enough drugs and bad happenings, and good times and bad times.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in?
When I was that age, I'm still in the neighborhood I grew up in. So, hey, we're in control. But I'll be honest, for me, when I think about that age, I just remember every other summer my family would go to Honduras, right? So that to me was like my parents building their house, a lot of my family being, relatively poor, and it was very common to go use an outhouse, right? And somebody will walk you to the outhouse, and when I'm like, there's a little Americana, and walking through what I felt like fields, right? But it wasn't fields. It was just like, like in the Bronx, like there's a lot of buildings going up. And in Honduras, there was just a lot of land. Not a lot of houses where we lived. It was just a lot of like, just land, free land. And it wasn't a big deal. And you would see like crabs crawling, but it was just part of the land. So for me, when I think about being that age, is like every other summer having a different lifestyle, right? As opposed, it wasn't like I spent my summers here. I spent my summer there. And that's what I remember my grandfather, my grandmother, speaking Spanish, doing my, summer school homework that you had to finish, and doing that stupid hanger that they used to give us. I don't know if kids do that these days, but that's what I remember.
What is the hanger?
They used to make us do some, God forgive me, some stupid project where you had to read a book. I swear they did this every summer. You had to read a book, and then you had to like almost like do a book report, but you had to hang stuff from a hanger. And like the hangers that you get from the dry cleaner, because most people these days have plastic ones versus, those old ones that were, good weapons was what I call them, right? Because you will always get caught up in them, but you always used to do a project with a hanger. I always remember that you had to read a couple books, you always had to do like a book report, and it was something like you had to hang some items from a hanger. Child of the 80s, so that's what I remember. See how clear I remember something as dumb as a hanger, but it was just St. Athanasius School, and that's what you got from kindergarten up into 8th grade. So
that's my old church, St. Athanasius over there. Tiffany.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. What are I found these pages a bit sad. I don't know if it was just me, or there were some real growing pains like thrown at us. Like,
Kind of gives you an idea of how Puerto Rico
I've never touched a dead body. Like, reading this made me realize that I haven't done a lot of things, but I've definitely never touched a dead body. And when she's describing having to close the eyes on the baby corpse, I was just like, I mean, I thought it was written very well, but my reaction, I was like very emotional. I wasn't crying. I just felt like that was very morbid. And she wasn't, it seems like she handled it very well, very maturely, while she was there.
They did explain it well as a tradition that
Mhm.
is done in the home. So I think she sort of stepped up to the plate and did her religious duty.
El velorio is called, velorio, where they would, you
Is
know,
that
we
just
go to
what they-
funeral homes and they go to the home and they, you know, they do the praying and all that for the babies, and that's Puerto
Yeah.
Rico in the 50s, you know, and the parts where she lived was really, I was asking some friends who lived in Puerto Rico. That's reality. That was reality.
Mhm.
I found it very interesting once she said afterwards that she couldn't get this touch or the feel of death off her fingers, no matter what she did to wash them. And that was really what stuck with me, because she was steeling herself, building up to it. She carried it out, but then when she got home, it was like it really hit her of what she was just, put up to do, and she didn't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, I think she even said that when her mother asked her to do it, she got a feeling that she had already told them she was going to do it. And it's funny you say that, because I underlined that part, that line too. It's on page 147, like at the bottom of the page. She says the baby's eyes were shut. The lids were wet from the holy water, which made the baby look as if he'd been crying. I scraped my fingers against the peak of my dress, and it felt rough and dry, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that death was stuck to me. And then I was trying to find earlier when she was at the funeral, like earlier, I think maybe the first pages we read, and she also had some very like profound things to say about death there. But yeah, that is one of those feelings that you'll never forget.
I was wondering if her mom volunteered her, or was she really singled out to do this deed or task? Like, did her mom volunteer her to do this so she could be kind of accepted in the community? I'm not sure.
I wonder. It didn't seem like, yeah, maybe, because this was before Poppy came back, right? This is when like they were living without him, right?
But did her mother volunteer her, or did a neighbor request her?
She was picked out.
Yeah.
Curandera, I'm sorry, but Curandera
All right.
saw you and picked you out from among many little girls for this honor. You should be proud you were chosen. That's the line.
Yes, I do remember that.
It was an honor.
La
You should.
curandera is a powerful person too.
Mm.
You know what I was thinking? Why do you have to, not particularly even to this book, but why do you have to close the person's eyes that die?
Yeah, I don't really know. I know in
Is it
here
out
they
of
said,
like respect, or?
well, in here they said the soul, the spirit,
Right.
like is trapped in the body. That's what it said
Yeah.
like in these
Yeah.
pages.
Yeah, you have to close the eyes for the spirit to leave the body, or something like that.
That's
Yeah.
stuff made up.
I mean, it's
Well-
religion. Religion is made up.
No, exactly. But there's a lot of, oh my Lord.
There was some other kind of like folky, traditional stuff that was mentioned in these pages too. At the beginning, I can't remember who was talking, maybe the sister or the neighbor, but she was referring to like, if you ever hit your mom, they won't be able to close your casket because your arms would be like stick up in the air. So there were a bunch of like folky kind of tales that I really appreciated.
Which made me question whether or not, you know, how much, like to Barbara's point, how much of it was made up versus how much of it were things that were told to get kids to fall in line or to do what they're supposed to do. Or, I mean, even was she chosen, or was it something that was told to her to convince her to do it, you know, because they figured, you know, who wants to go touch a dead body, right? So to say, hey, you were chosen, right? Or yeah, if you hit your mom, you know, they won't be able to close your casket. Like, are there some things that come up just to get people to fall in line? I wonder.
But again, I'm not disparaging religion, but that's religion. I mean, religion is full of anecdotes and tales and instructions on what you should do to save your soul, or what you should do to keep your family in like a good place with God. It might be true, I don't know, but yeah, all of those tales are kind of told, you know, year after year, just to it kind of maintains order in the household. If you put the fear in God, if you put the fear of God in, you know, in kids or the husband, or the husband is leading just such an interesting life, because he's just coming and going as he feels, as he sees fit. And mom is just taking him back. Then he leaves, then he comes back.
Don't get Barbara started.
So he's putting it on mom, and mom is angry, but mom is quite happy, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think she's happy about
I don't
him
think she's happy. She's
all
just
over town.
complacent, you know, she ain't happy.
Well,
I
she
think
can't
this
go anywhere.
also shows her power, her own power, and her own individuality. Being able to, because it seems like she's done this on more than one occasion throughout the whole time, the chapters that we've read. She must have left the household at least, I don't know, half a dozen times already, maybe, you know, a handful of times already. So she kind of picks up and leaves whenever she has a discussion with the dad, or somehow, some way she knows that the dad is not coming back. It's more like a battle between husband and wife, rather than between like her unhappiness in her with her children and all that. It's a battle between husband and wife, and she's just, the kids are getting the wrath of it, right? So the kids are the ones that are picked up, uprooted all over the place. So, but at some point, Negi also says this in the chapter, I think it's Letters from New York, or she says something about the song and the jukebox, and she's explaining how, oh, now I realize that this is the relationship my parents have, like this back and forth type of thing.
Lovers' troubles.
Mm-hmm.
Or could it
But
be
you know-
because they're not really married either?
I was just about to say that. I was
know?
just about
Oh,
to.
they're not married?
I don't think
No,
they're married.
Or they're
not,
just living?
not in the sense that we call traditional marriage, but you
Mm.
know,
So like if he's living with her, and that's kind of like a marriage thing, right? Like,
Common law.
after 7
Oh.
years is common law, right?
right. But I mean, after 7 years and after 7 kids, yeah, you're married, dude.
You're married.
You're married, dude.
Well, you're not bound by any written documents where he could
Es su
take
marido.
off. he could take off and come whenever he wants. Let my husband.
And
tell
he does take off and come whenever he, and we've reached the point in the text where they leave to go to New York, right? We're at that point. So
She-
even that, she
She
said that,
does with her son.
right?
The mother does.
Yeah.
The mother does.
But I don't necessarily think that the legal bounds of marriage are plays that big of a part in it, right? Because there's, you know, I don't know if it's culture or what have you, but like, and I don't even know about this whole common law thing, but it's like, you know, in Spanish, tu marido es tu marido, right? Yeah, it's not even like in marido to a certain extent. It's not like just saying your man, that is your husband. So I think it's just, you know, and a husband also goes back and forth, right? So you don't have to be necessarily married, but they have a relationship, like going back to the prior book, and they have a relationship with each other that goes beyond the kids. The kids are just the ones suffering from it, but they do have a relationship no matter how toxic it is. Because unless something happens, no one's gonna know they're not married. Some people, you never know they're not married until, God forbid, somebody dies and they're like, where's your marriage certificate?
Right. And it was probably more common relationships like this who people presented as though they were married, but they weren't, you know, married in the eyes of the law.
Yeah, but what we know of Papi, what we know of him so far, I don't even think that a legal document would have stopped him from coming and going the way that he is. You know, I really don't. Even if they were really married, really married, legally married, I don't think a piece of paper would have stopped him from just shucking and jiving like all throughout the island, you know?
Do you guys think that Papi had very little to offer, so therefore he gave what he could offer? And to me, he seems very complacent. It doesn't seem to be like I don't know how I can say this, but it doesn't seem to be malicious. I'm gonna be a player or whatever. It just seems to be, I have very little to offer, so I'm gonna bounce around. Whoever's happy, that's who I'm gonna stay with. It's routine, it's very predictable, it's predictability. So he knows I'm gonna go here on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever. There seems like to me there's a pattern that everyone's content with. So to me, a lot of complacency on his part, and in a sick way, I don't really think it's malicious. I think it's just maybe it's intellect, or maybe sexual desire for various people or whatever. I don't know.
Well then, Miss Sherry, let me ask you this. How do you, with all of that, how do you make up the fact that when he is there, and I agree with you, but when he is there giving the little that he can give, what do you make of the fact that he's making decisions and fighting for decisions? For example, for Nehi to go play the piano with the Don Lewis. That was his decision, you know, that, and there was like a fight about it, but I believe that was him, you know, putting his foot down, if you will. So what do you kind of make of that, even though he's not this presence, but when he is there, he's somehow has word?
When he's there, he becomes Superman, apparently. You know, he's going to step up into the male role and do his thing. And sadly, I'm certain all the women, to me, in my mind, all the women are probably doing the same thing when he comes around. You know, all the houses that he's back and forth, he gets to step up and make those decisions, and they respect him as the male in the household.
I'm also thinking, like, you know, he works really hard. He works 7 days a week, and he's committed to his family, and he loves his children. And that's why he steps in, you know, for Esmeralda when she wants to play piano. And there's other times where come with me and help me build the kitchen, or like his children love him. And so I'm just thinking, yeah, this is a life, and this is who men are or can be. They are womanizers. We talked about that in the first, you know, conversation, and it's not uncommon in Puerto Rican, you know, culture, families. But I guess I feel like I want to give him, like, in some ways, if you're working 7 days a week Like, what kind of outlets does he feel like he needs to have? And it's a different set of circumstances. I don't condone it, like, oh, that's fine, because it's very painful to his wife. It's very painful to her mother. But and I also want to give that he's a man who works hard and provides for his family and loves his children, and his children love him. So I just want to kind of add that.
The least, after all, working hard and providing, the least he should be allowed is some side chicks.
I must be missing something.
Ron, you better go for that run, man.
I'm completely missing something.
I'm missing something, y'all.
He's just missing.
Where do y'all
So
see
where is the
working hard
commitment in
and
that?
I don't think he's doing that. Didn't Mommy have to get a job? Wasn't that the name of the chapter?
I'm not quite sure if I agree with the commitment level there. So Ron, he's worthy of a side piece. Okay. Where's the
So is
commitment
she.
coming from? What?
He does consistently, he's committed to returning to his wife and coming back to her. No, that doesn't.
That's not a commitment. That's just
That
a
doesn't
side.
happen in the book. That's how I'm
It's
reading
a
it.
warm bed.
Thank you,
Ron is just
Anna.
trying-
That's
Ron
a
doesn't
warm
believe
It
bed.
is a warm
That
bed.
this is a comfort
Listen.
zone
That's
right here.
baby number 8.
Ron does
you.
not believe that. He's just trying to stir something up right
Yeah,
now.
you're right, Lydia.
Because you weren't paying attention, Barbara, so he wanted to get your attention.
There's a passage.
Exactly.
There's a passage where the husband and wife were together, and Negi walks in on them, and the wife is quite happy that the husband has returned.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're in the bed together making love, and Negi walks in or hears something.
She's getting
And
it
both
too.
of them seem equally happy.
That's right. Well, when you're having sex, that's a good thing.
I mean, is it equally happy
like-
or equally complacent? Like, I can't remember who brought that up. I mean, I feel like there is this sense of discontent when he is not there, right? Like when he's not there, she expresses to the children, or at least to Esmeralda, a level of discontent. But each time he comes back, wasn't there that scene where she took everything that he owned and threw it out? Right. And then afterwards got it back, washed it, and tried to make sure that it was ready for him when he returned. Right. So I feel like she herself, and this is just the nature and complexities of relationships, right? She herself, she hates him 1 minute and then he comes back, 7 kids later, right? He comes back and they rekindle and they, and maybe she's hopeful that there's a difference, but then it falls back into that pattern again, and he does what she allows him to do, right? She takes him back each time, right? So I don't know.
It's a give and take. It's a give and take relationship.
I don't think she's happy.
I think she's happy.
That's what she has.
I don't think she's happy. I don't think he's happy. But I think, if this is what you see to a certain extent, right? It's so common, right? That how can you want to break the pattern to a certain extent, but if this is what you see, like my father was a Rolling Stone too, but that doesn't mean that that's something that others want to emulate. Unfortunately, some of my brothers did, but it's so common to a certain extent. I don't know if I'm explaining it well, that, they go back and forth. And some people go back and forth for 30 years. And it could be like a soap opera. It's like a novela, right? She took out his stuff, she brought it back in. There's something about the drama that they like. Unfortunately, it's the truth. Some people like the drama.
is it liking the drama, or like just things are complex? Like, I mean, there's no one here who had like a love-hate kind of relationship with a significant other. Like, you know, one minute you're like, oh yeah, next minute you're like, oh, right. I just think that I don't think relationships just follow, they always follow this script, right? Like, I think sometimes it is a back and forth, you know, because relationships and interactions are complex, right? Like, you can, I think, one moment really be disgusted with someone, one moment, and the next moment, like, genuinely be like, oh, okay, you know, like, I think that's how relationships work, right? Good, bad, and ugly. That's part of what it is.
No, and I agree with that. I agree that, you know, relationship dynamics are different, but there's something sometimes, I'll be honest, like, some people may like the drama. Some people may like the bochinche. Some people may like being very passionate about it, right? So you underline all of this, there's hurt. There's always going to be hurt, but it's almost like, what's that scene in that Whitney Houston movie with Angela Bassett? She burned and she walked away.
Waiting to exhale.
She was hurt, but that was drama, right? Burning up his clothes and all this, that was drama, but the underlying pain, that was pain there. So, yeah, people.
Mommy may feel like, you know, if I do not have all of him, but a piece is better than nothing.
Concur.
I'm not saying it's right, good, bad, or whatever, but because she doesn't seem to, I mean, she gets angry, but then she gets over it very quickly, and then it's back onto the lovemaking and another baby. So.
And furthermore, she doesn't seem to have any other love interests. It seems like he's the only.
When would she have time?
Exactly.
I mean,
unless the
Where's
milkman
Greg?
shows
Where's
up.
Greg at? I know that was
maybe,
Greg's voice.
I mean, we don't even see her checking out. We don't see her looking at any men. We don't see her.
That's not how it works usually.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
He could be
It's all
competitive.
about the man, and women usually are dedicated. Women usually stay dedicated to the relationship.
Because women don't get horny, right?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, but.
Well, you know,
I'll go there with you, man.
She doesn't want to be called a bad name. She doesn't want to be called a.
I know. If a woman does it, she's a puta. If a man does it, he's a man of the world.
Really into how things look, appearances, and being respectful and that kind of thing. So.
There are societal norms that she's living within, even though she's suffering under them, and the husband or the man is, you know, elevated in the conversation, but women can't. I mean, they can, and sometimes they do, but for the most part, it is men who kind of go out into the world, and women just sort of wait at home, praying that things, well, maybe not praying, but hoping that things will return to normal.
In slippers and pregnant, right?
What I was saying,
she has 8 children, so.
But is there a semblance of competition here, right? Because if she keeps on getting pregnant, what else could be a symbol that this man keeps on coming back but a child? I'm just saying, I'm just putting it out there.
No.
Like, he keeps on coming back. Well, this is proof that he keeps on coming back.
Well, there was no birth control at the time.
Right.
All right. And when you have sex, I don't think he's going to pull out. So there you go.
But it's still a symbol, right? It's still a child. Unfortunately, it's still a symbol that this man came back.
Yeah. And that's why the mother is not as, you know, like we were talking last time, she's not kumbaya with the kids and, you know, because she's busy doing things. So another one pops out and she'll do what she can to take care of it. But, you know, that's the way it was in those days. You know, there's no birth control until the Americans came and experimented on the women. But that's another story.
I think that was actually during this time period. So that's why it's even more interesting that she's having so many kids, because this is running parallel to the history of forced sterilization on the island. Someone else was going to chime in. Yeah, this is so interesting. I wonder, you know, there was one quick thing I thought about, because she does say, talking about staying on this topic, she does mention that she knew that she didn't want to be crying over a man like her mom was, like she hadn't witnessed her mom. So that's like one kind of like generational curse that she's, you know, we at least foresee that she will be breaking. But one thing I thought was interesting that it's almost like we watched something be passed down from generation to generation was and I know this happens in like a lot of families, but I thought it was very interesting that at 11 or 12, she was spanking her younger brothers and sisters. And that's, and taking that role, I know especially a lot of families that have so many children, the oldest becomes like a parental figure. But I thought it was very interesting that so young, she was already disciplining children. When
I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Which is probably, you know, what we consider, you know, something that is not acceptable now is quite acceptable back then. So to have the eldest spanking the kids probably is not looked at abnormally, but just as the way you discipline young kids, you know, and we think about that differently now. So I mean,
Yes.
she is the eldest.
It's kind of part of like what it means to raise the kids, because that's what her mother's doing. Her
That is
mother's
discipline.
raising and, you know, hitting her over the head with pans and disciplining them. And so it's like then, oh, responsibility goes to her to take care of her sisters and brothers. Well, that's part of what it means to take care of your sisters and brothers, is you got to discipline them, because that's what you see your mother doing. How you keep them, you know, in place, you know, and not running wild, is that you discipline them.
Yeah. I just thought that was interesting that she picked up on that, you know, so quickly. But she knew definitely that even though she watched her mom, this is how you keep a man. You just keep having sex with him and keep having all his babies, and eventually he'll come back home. She knew that wasn't it. You know, she was a strong enough individual with a strong enough mind to know that wasn't it, you know. So I just thought that was interesting, you know, kind of how we get to witness her breaking certain generational curses, and then literally learning one thing from her mother and immediately doing it exactly the same. I don't know. It's one thing that kind of popped across my mind.
Well, there's other ways in which she does also rebel. You know, she's a tomboy, and she has, I mean, there's 7 of them. So she does also pass on the child rearing or taking care to some of her other sisters with the even smaller ones. So she's not, so she kind of rebels. She wants to be out there playing and, you know, hanging out and playing piano and doing other things with her life. She is kind of like, I got to do this, but she's not mama to 7 kids. She's smart enough to figure out how to, you know, delegate that also to some of the other ones who are younger than her, but who could still take care of the ones who are even younger.
No, it's terrible to say, but in a way, she had a lot of little sexual behaviors going on too, like show me yours, I'll show you mine. She wasn't afraid to do that. And these dreams, these sexual dreams and things, to me, she's sort of young for that. And I know everyone develops at a different level, but that's sort of interesting to me that she really doesn't have the fear of doing that. And the conversation with, I can't remember the boy's name, but you know, talking about his penis and those types of things. That was sort of interesting to me because of her age. I think then she was only what, like maybe 11?
Yeah, but also to add to that, she's also kind of hearing, or I mean, they don't really have any walls in any of these houses they live in. They're kind of, she always mentions that the wall is like, rooms are separated by curtains. So she's also hearing the sex, right? She's hearing the sex between her mom and her father.
She's hearing something. She doesn't know if it's sex or not.
Well, near the end of the last chapter we read, she definitely does know they're having something going on. So she is becoming, you know, an older child. She's still a child, but she's becoming sort of more aware.
The
And
birds and the bees.
there's a scene where she feels like she's about to be abused by the piano teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of an awareness of your body, you know, as this sort of, you know, sexualized place. So she is becoming aware, definitely.
And
Yeah, but even that interaction was strange to me, that you bring it up, because when she told her mom something that the piano teacher said, her mom was like, oh, you know, no, that got, you know, well, she was upset. And oh yeah, the piano teacher asked her to wear a particular dress, right? And her mom was like, wait, why did he ask you to do that? And she was like, Esmeralda was like, well, I'm gonna wear what I want to wear regardless, right? Like she almost wanted that attention because she wore the dress that he asked her to wear, despite her mom's warning not to. And then she was taken aback when he advanced on her the way that he did. So that was interesting to me, because it's almost as if, yeah, she desired that type of attention, but then when she received it, she was like, whoa, wait a second. She was startled by it, which, you know, might speak to the youth, and also just the piano teacher being disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to want attention because you look pretty, which is what I think she wanted. And then, you know, it's a whole other craziness.
Right. True.
Somebody, you know, abuses you or attempts to anyway. But it was nice to see both parents, you know, again, sort of going back to this family dynamic, parental dynamic, that both parents were upset enough to approach the principal or to approach this music teacher separately. So that kind of goes back to this whole idea of whether the father is like fully invested in this family. He does take offense to what has happened, and he goes to speak to the piano teacher, as does the mother. So.
yeah.
Ron, he went to speak to him because the mother demanded that he go speak to him. And then she decided to go herself,
right?
Because she figured he's
Right.
not going to do the job. I'm going to go do it.
Right.
To add quickly to that point, he was the reason she was there anyway, because Mommy didn't want her to go. So just to add to that point, the fact that he was hesitant to confront the piano teacher, she wouldn't have been in that situation, you know, if it weren't for him demanding it.
Right.
I think Phil, overall character development, Poppy's character is very weak to me. I feel he's very, for some reason, I feel he's very pathetic, more pitiful than anything. I don't know why, I guess. Maybe trying to love 5 women or whatever, but it's something very, like, very weak, very pathetic, very pitiful, you know, although he's working on these days.
But he's spreading himself thin also. So he's like losing it eventually. You know, how much more could he, you know, how many women and how many people could he be responsible for when he's out there, you know, doing the wrong?
And I also think that the author purposely wrote him that way to sort of take away his power in the book and how he's presented in the book. That he's almost like this sort of two-dimensional, not almost, he is like, where the mother has more story to her, the father is what he is. He's a dude who just steps out on his wife, then comes home and continues that pattern, where we see the mother is, I wouldn't say she has chosen to better her life, but because of the father's philandering, she has to step up and make money and, you know, move the children a few times for work and things like that. So
What do you mean by that, Fran? That you're saying the author is portraying him deliberately?
I don't think that she, Esmeralda Santiago, invested the same time in the father as she has in the mother. And maybe the mother has a stronger role growing up in Esmeralda's actual life, that the mother had a stronger role in her growing up. But everything that is affecting this family pretty much is because of the father constantly leaving the home. So I believe that that kind of leads to the mom's dissatisfaction, which leads to I'm still struck by, the mom beating the children with pots and pans.
Horrible.
That Negi now has taken on almost the role of a parent, and she is not even a teenager yet, and she has 6 younger siblings, that she now has to coordinate their care. So there's a lot of things that are happening because of the bad choices the father is making, but it still seems like the book is really, and this is purposeful, I definitely understand it, but the book feels more dedicated to the role of the mother. And then we don't have any, not to say that the father deserves empathy, but he's just a philanderer. He's a flat character.
And the mother was the one who was around.
What's that?
The mother was the one who was around, right? So it's,
Yeah.
This is a memoir.
But yeah.
But yeah.
It's like,
Oh, wow. Myra, are you saying that the character is flat in the book because the character was flat in real life? Type of behavior. It was, she couldn't give him more, she couldn't make him a 3-dimensional character because he wasn't a 3-dimensional character in her life.
I don't think he's flat. It's like Barbara was saying last week. The mother is doing practically everything for them to survive. But the father, when he comes, he shares things. Like Negi, she can't ask the mother anything because the mother will right away, she doesn't have time. She literally doesn't have time for that. But when Papi comes, he has time because, what else is he gonna do? He's visiting there for a few days. He's gonna plant his roots, plant his seeds, and just, take care of his business while he's there. So it's like, I don't think he's flat because he's prominent in her life, but,
But
and
he's also in and out of her life, right?
yeah, in and out, but he's prominent.
He's prominent, but, I think the biggest impression is probably her mom because she's the one there. And I read the books out of order. I read Turkish Lover. So when I was, a kid myself, so I could sort of see why her father doesn't have that much of a presence in this particular book. Just thinking about the books that come following.
Yeah.
But it's strange because in my household, I didn't have a father, but my step siblings had, there were 3 Valentines, and the father would come and go, their father. But, so, it's like there was a connection because he had another family somewhere in Brooklyn. So, it's like, it's repetitive. They bring it from Puerto Rico, they bring it here, and, somebody has to break, like they were saying, it's a curse. And, it gets broken as we get educated, as we become more aware of things. And that's why I think marriage does play a big, important role. Because if you get married, you have some kind of responsibility, or else there's the divorce, and then there's, kind of monetary nonsense with what goes on. But I think marriage has come to the foreground of people who at one time didn't want to do it. You got to get married.
I don't think marriage then in Puerto Rico had the same legal status as marriage does now. There is no suing for alimony. There's probably no, I'm making assumptions, I'm not Puerto Rican, but Puerto Rico's probably a heavily Catholic island. So that probably discouraged divorces. You may have separated and, kind of gone your own ways, but there was no alimony involved. The dude just left. Now all that's changed, but probably I've never felt strongly about that about that piece of paper that legally binds you. In a marriage, I think that you are either committed or you are not committed, and a piece of paper won't increase that.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know, how they felt.
Yeah.
Well, I would also say that I'm not sure it's just like old in Puerto Rico and change
I
coming
agree.
here. Because, in my family, I have cousins who've been with their partners and they call them husbands for 30 years and they were never legally married. I have my cousin's children, and they're like in their 30s. Some of them have had children, but haven't actually gotten married. And some of them got married. I mean, so it's just like they're committed, they're in relationships, but the importance of that institution or that, as you say, that legal document, I think that continues. It really varies, like who takes it on and who doesn't.
It's just become more important important in society over the years, right? Because of laws and things associated with benefits and things associated with, okay, who's the executive of your estate and blah, 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 blah. But I think, at one point, I don't think getting married was, I don't know, I might be wrong. Maybe it wasn't expensive, or maybe it was cheap, or maybe getting married was an effort. You got to go to the next town over and see what municipal is open. So there could be a lot of reasons why marriage, it was just like, well, we're in a relationship, and to go to the courthouse or whatever, especially in a pueblo, it could be the 3 hours away to go get married for all we know.
And I'm sure that institution was reinforced by the Catholic Church, that this is how you became legitimate within the eyes of God if you got, legally married, not just, not just, God forbid, committed to someone, but you have to have this piece of paper. I'm sure that was started in most countries by the Catholic, or by religion, not just the Catholic Church.
True.
You guys notice that Mommy does most of the discipline, and she never is like, wait till your father gets home. It's like it's not even a thought until he comes back. Like he's really not even thought about until he comes back. So, I mean, to me, Mommy's role is continually developing, and Dad's, to me, is flatlined. I can't see him doing anything any different. He's so routine, mundane. He's going to do the same things over and over again. Like he doesn't know how to go to the next level, while Mom keeps leveling up in her own little way.
And
not learning anything.
Can you repeat that, Susan?
He's not learning from his experiences. He just keeps doing it over and over.
And Mom now has the responsibility of this one child who has almost lost a foot, that she now has to, take the child to New York City to go to doctors now. There's, that's like an amazing feat. It seems like for that time period for her, even though Puerto Ricans are migrating this is like the migration period, for Puerto Ricans coming here, but she is on her own with all these children, and, she is now responsible for the healthcare. I mean, as she would be, but it's still like, a big feat for her to bring her child to New York for medical care.
Her mom's here, right though? Or who does she know here in New York? I thought it was the granny.
A granny is here. I'm not sure if
Abuela.
it's her mother's or her father's.
No, the father's
mother.
in Puerto Rico because
I mean, the father's mother. I don't know.
yeah, the father's mother. Isn't that where they take her to
Oh, that's
stay?
right. That's right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's the mother's mother, the abuela, on the mother's
Yeah.
side.
Who, by the way, drags Negi because she doesn't like one of her letters that she wrote. She doesn't like her penmanship.
She like her handwriting.
Like her handwriting, yeah.
I was like, oh my God, she went hard on Negi.
I loved that part.
As an aside, do you know that Esmeralda had a stroke of some kind?
Recently?
No, back about 20 years ago, she was writing, and then when she got up from the stroke, she saw it was like gibberish writing. And so she went and they told her she had some kind of a stroke that she had to relearn to speak and to write in both languages. Yeah, she's been through a lot.
This book makes me feel like I'm ADHD. There's so much going on. It is so packed with so many things. For a teenager, 11-year-old, a 13-year-old, it's so much information in there. It's like, you think things are going well, and then the next issue happens or occurs, and then she has to problem solve and process it to the best of her ability. But I'm like, man, I'm losing track of everything, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Fast paced, lots of things going on.
Mm-hmm. Where I felt for her is when she goes to this new home and she has to use the hole in the floor. I was like, good gracious, what else are they gonna do to you, Negi? And she was like, and Negi was like, I'm having no parts of that hole. There are monsters down there and they're gonna come get me. I'm having no parts of that hole.
And her mother made her squat.
Yeah.
And deal with the hole.
Yeah.
I would love to know if she was just like exceptionally bright, like a brilliant mind, or the other thing, and no disrespect, I mean, she's really brilliant. Like if she was on the high end of Asperger's, because she is like, her thinking and her mindset for an 11-year-old, a 13-year-old, to me was very advanced.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, was she just like super, super brilliant? Or exactly what was going on with her intellect?
She's definitely fully aware of her environment, and she seems to have shaped opinions that aren't burdened by her upbringing, like using the hole in the floor. Like, I'm sure that is probably a normal thing, but because, you know, she knows what she doesn't want to do. And the fact that other people or many people are, you know, doing that, you know, she's like, no, I'm not having any of that, you know? So it's like decisions like that that really sort of paint her as this like really independent kid. She's still a child. So, yeah.
Sad.
Yeah, it is sad, Susan.
What did Sherry say about her intellect?
I'm just trying to figure out, I think she's just exceptionally bright. I said either she's super, super genius, or did she border on having Asperger's? I think she's just like super smart for that age. I mean, just her processing ability, the things that she thinks about. And to me, that's very advanced thinking for a child of that age. Yeah.
You know, sometimes I think that when authors write memoirs, they make themselves intelligent. So they're not going to write a memoir and paint themselves as an idiot. Right. But I think that the book doesn't suffer because of it, but Negi almost feels overly intelligent for her age and overly observant, like an adult is crafting a child. You know, she's put her Esmeralda has put her adult mind in Negi's, 10-year-old body. So she does feel like super intelligent, or at least aware of her surroundings.
Yeah, and I wonder if part of that is because, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but she really, most of her interactions are with other adults, right? She doesn't really have any friends her age. She doesn't really have a lot of kids or people her age around. It seems like most of her interactions are with adults. And I thought it was a bit odd. I'm glad you brought that up, Ron, because I did think it was a bit odd that her only kind of like nemesis wasn't like a mean girl at school, but it was the teacher. Do y'all remember that scene? That was odd to me.
Yeah.
Teacher.
It's like the teacher that like
actually a check.
No,
in
but
the,
that,
sorry, go ahead, Anna.
that teacher was mean to her. Shoo. She liked the other one, but this teacher was not nice as a teacher. I'll say that.
I said that was the only check in the column for the dad, if you want to get to that, is when he basically saves her from that school and from that teacher, right? He comes in like the superhero. So he talks with her, she's laughing, and then says goodbye and sayonara, and now they're off to another town to live. So, there's one for him.
But what did he say to the teacher? Did he say
He probably made a date with her.
Right?
Oh yeah, do you want to be one of my girlfriends? Let me holler at you.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, honestly, I was thinking that he went and schmoozed her a little bit, and she was gonna be girl number XY. But I also thought that was interesting, right? That the dad kind of did have these like superhuman or superhero like Rico Suave type powers over women. I know we're all saying that he's flat, or some of us are saying that he's flat, or that he just is very complacent, he doesn't have a lot to offer, but it seems like he knows how to work with the ladies. And it seems like Esmeralda, he doesn't. Maybe that's just because she, again, is a parental figure in the children's lives, that she just doesn't have time either to play with other children and form those relationships, those playground relationships. But it does seem that she doesn't really get along. I don't know if she doesn't get along with other people, but it doesn't seem like she has a lot of friends at all.
They're constantly moving, and there's no children, they have to be very careful where they live too, and the mother doesn't want them hanging out in the lagoon or wherever, the latrine. They're not living in very safe environments either.
And she's also kind of always working. Do you remember when Mommy goes to New York, she's like picking potatoes or like skinning potatoes all day?
Esmeralda is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What chapter is that?
Which I think that's also important. That's when after they leave El Mangal, I'm butchering this. Whatever the first place they are in the first chapter we read today. Then they go back to Santurce. It's either that or Mangale. And then they go to Santurce, and that's when she's staying with the cousins. And even the treatment of the two different girl cousins, Olga and Angie, of how one is basically given everything, and the other one is like left to this very sparse room, and that's the girl she gets stuck peeling the potatoes with to help the uncle's business, which gets into a whole other thing of like who's desirable, who's favored, and for what reasons is this one favored over the other. So I think that's very telling as well.
And I wondered if there was some pigment hierarchy there that just wasn't discussed on the page, because I didn't get that part either. Like, why were those two sisters treated so differently?
Well, you said pigment?
Pigment, like lighter skin versus darker skin, pigment hierarchy.
Probably.
I mean, they do call her negrita.
There you go.
Does anyone know? I was actually wondering that too, Greg. Maybe Myra, I know you speak Spanish. Does anyone know how do you pronounce the name of that town that they lived in?
Mangle.
Mangle.
Mangle. I had trouble with it. Mangle.
Mangle.
Mangle. Mangle.
I hate that nickname.
Where does anybody know that town in Puerto Rico? Because it seems like it was like in a bit of a swamp.
Well, a lot of towns like that don't exist anymore. And, you know, where my mother is from, Atore, that area where she was born doesn't exist. I mean, it's a highway or something now. So a lot of these places are just like,
Yeah, they're over 70 years old or 60 years old, so they may not exist today.
I did wonder why even up until now, and I mean, I get this is her memoir, but I don't really get a real sense of any of the other children's personalities. I just see them as like rambunctious, little people who are in the way. Like I don't see any
brats.
I get any person. Rugrats, yes, exactly. I don't see any like personalities of any of them, or even if she, you know, has a favorite. Or anything.
That's intentional because didn't they fight until they drew blood? I mean, like they fought like crazy. So she may not have a lot of positive memories, maybe. I know she felt a little bit of guilt about her brother's, you know, foot, but a couple of times they fought like to the point of blood.
Didn't you with your siblings? We did.
I'm the only girl, so they couldn't fight me.
There were 8 of us. We were sent to church just to get out of the house.
And plus she was one of many, so you know it's about her as opposed to if she starts writing about all her siblings, like good Lord, she would never finish.
I know, but she didn't have a favorite growing up or anything, one that she was close to. I guess her mother, I guess that's kind of, again, coming full circle. That's maybe something that she also picked up from the mother, that kind of idea of closeness or lovey-dovey or however we were describing it earlier. Maybe she really was just about keeping them alive and fed and disciplined. There was no time for a favorite. There was no time for being vulnerable and having those maybe closer moments with all of those kids, you know.
I would say that because of that injury, maybe Raymond, it seems like Raymond was starting to get a lot more of the affection and the attention. In addition to the fact he had to go to the States to get the specialist treatment. And there's a scene where he's crawling into her lap, and I know he's age 5 at that time, and she has to console him. So I'm sure that really kind of brought mother and son very close because of just the amount of time they had to spend together to deal with this very serious injury of his.
Yes.
Eric, didn't Esmeralda say that she was a little bit jealous of that time of the mother and son having that close time because of his injury?
Yeah, she really wanted to go to New York, right?
Yes.
She really wanted to go with them.
And then she doesn't trust the time frame of the mother returning to New York. It's almost like she's afraid. I don't know if she wants to go with them or she's afraid she'll be abandoned. And she really wants to know exactly when the mom is coming back. You know, none of this vague in a couple weeks or something like that.
Like the father did?
Right. She wants to know exactly when the mom is coming back.
Right.
She's afraid of those evangelicals too.
And it could have been also the timing when people would come to the States and not necessarily, even though they're US citizens, but not necessarily go immediately back to the island because they've got to work and, you know, they can find work here and they can save money back. So that's part of it too, right? Like people always think, oh, I'm going to go. And then 6 years later, you go back to your home country.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely written on the page that she has that fear. Because I think that the day that she said she was going to come back, it got pushed back, didn't it? And she ended up coming back like a week later or something like that. So there was that fear that she was going to be left. And I wonder if that was just learned behavior from the way the father had been, you know, kind of using the front door as a revolving door as well.
Yeah, she put on her dress and packed her suitcase and was waiting and waiting.
Yeah.
Not to mention she's been left before. Remember when she stayed with the grandmother and dad was supposed to get her whatever, and she wound up being there for what, how many weeks?
Yeah.
Right.
You resemble that, Greg?
But I also, I don't know, there's something, not to say that it's right, but there's something about the way you raised that it just becomes the norm, right? Like you do what you have to do. I mean, my sister, when my mom came to the States, she stayed back with my maternal grandparents, right? So it's not so out of the norm. Her reflecting back on this, yes, it's something that has an impact in her life and how she's building up her story. But if we take a step back, there's a part of it that this is par for the course. This is not that, it's really is not that unique, or, and I'm not saying that's right, but like the father's womanizing. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, we're abhor, but like, okay, like she's staying with her grandmother. Okay. Her mother coming to New York City and not going back immediately. Okay. Like, I don't want to be dismissive, but it's just, it is life. You know what I mean? It's just, it is.
I agree with you, Myra.
Myra, are you saying that her story is not
It's a
unusual?
life that you can understand, right? It's a life that you get, that it makes sense to you, that you don't understand why anyone would be up in arms. Like, it's a life that you get. However, for a lot of people, that idea of instability in your child's life is absolutely terrifying, and it's what they work so hard to avoid. You know what I'm saying? The risk that they're running all over town, the moving from place to place. But to some people, this is what I think is so interesting about this text, is that for some people, like Mara, like Anna, this is like, yeah, this is it. This is what's happening. You're searching almost for a chapter where you're shocked at, right? You're searching for things to be shocked about. This is regular in its life. And I think for some other people that could read this novel, a lot of the things, the spanking with the cast iron skillet, I'm calling CPS, out of control, the living on the island where you are literally eating and drinking human waste, like that, completely unacceptable. It's called neglect, so it's so interesting to me how this memoir lays her life out so bare that if you get it, if you know, that phrase, if you know, and if you don't, you are appalled. But that idea of being appalled by it kind of would sound crazy to somebody who's used to it. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I don't mean to be dismissive. It's just, just like a little, it's just kind of, yeah, it's exactly what you said, right? It's like the opposite of my sentiment. So we're both right? Because it's just like, it's just like, it is what it is. And then I also try to remember that this is what, she was born 1948. I just looked it up. Like, this is like the 50s and 60s. So also placing, what I know about that time, regardless if you're in Puerto Rico, you could be freaking in DR, what have you. So it's just like, just take a step back and be like, okay,
But would it be more like you're not shocked by it because it's more the norm? It's like, it's a common theme in a lot of people's lives more than anything. So you're not really shocked by it, even though it happened in the 50s, but it's like the norm. So I guess for mainstream America, they'll probably be shocked by the discipline and the infidelities and things like that, because they have this quote unquote image. But in reality, it's the norm.
And I think it's the norm here too. It's just, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's the norm in life.
It's the norm here, so that's why I'm like,
people don't want to admit to it, but it's the norm at the end of the day.
You said the magic words. People don't want to.
Depends whose house you go to.
Like people want to say, well, what's a dysfunctional house? Who has a functional household? I don't think there's not one functional household. There's dysfunction everywhere. So,
True
That's what
that.
I look at. That's how I look at it. So
No, exactly. Sometimes I like old movies, like from the 40s and the 20s, and then you go read the biographies of these people, and they were married 4 or 5 times. And it's just like, and now if you talk about it now, 2021, people want to act up like, oh my gosh, she's been married 4 or 5 times like Jennifer Lopez. And I'm like, but do you realize what these people were doing in silent movies? Like, come on.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. What is so normal to you. For example, I remember when I first moved to New York, like 10 years ago, I was shocked that no one had a license. They just don't have licenses. They don't have driver's licenses. I was shocked that the majority of my friends who are from New York, born and raised in New York, can't
no
swim.
need for it.
Can't swim. They don't even know. They can't swim. They can't drive. They don't really know how to use a hammer. These are things that I'm like, so what do you do, like, if you need to go somewhere? Like, I guess in Michigan, you get a driver's license when you are 15. Everybody's been driving since they were 12.
Oh, no.
It's in big cars too, like massive, like old school cars. So when I came to New York, and literally every person I met who was born and raised in New York, like, they didn't have a driver's license. Why would they have one? They don't need it. So
Yeah.
It's so interesting, how where in Michigan and New York aren't even that far away from each other, but it's so interesting how that idea of normal, what's normal.
I take offense to the hammer thing. Right? We know how to use our hammers.
I'm sorry, but y'all are not domestic. Like, y'all cannot use a hammer. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's difficult to find a New Yorker who is good with their hands.
Brandon, I live in Michigan and I moved from New York, and I found it weird that when I came to Michigan, there was no public transportation.
Okay.
And everyone had to drive everywhere.
Because everyone drives.
So I'm reversed.
Yeah.
Once you leave New York, there's only a few cities in America that you can go without a car.
Yeah, I would argue that New York is the only one.
Yeah.
True. The public transportation has to be really good, and then it happens like that.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any other thoughts that we haven't talked about, or anything you want to bring up? We got about 6 minutes left.
I was thinking that Mommy's going to start going on all these trips to New York. She's going to start finding herself.
Mm-hmm.
She's not going to be in
hoping
Puerto
she
Rico
would
anymore.
Yeah, same here, Barbara. I was hoping she wasn't coming.
I mean, I don't know if she's going to come back. It doesn't seem like she has any intentions on it, but at some point, I don't remember exactly who said it, but I was thinking, does she have, because she has no choice but to move on, to be the provider, to focus on her children, focus on herself. When she goes to New York, it's a different lifestyle, although I know it's a different era than what we are now, but it would be different from Puerto Rico then versus New York then. So she's going to start getting more into herself, probably getting more into her looks and her demeanor and her disposition. It's going to probably allow her more power and dignity and self-identity out from herself.
Yeah, because outside of being, I mean, we get a little taste of her identity in Mommy Gets a Job, but you're right. Outside of that, we don't know her as anything except a mother and my wife.
So right now, she's just a mother of 7 children.
She's a hard
or at
worker,
least that's
too.
what her children see her as.
She works hard too to maintain those kids and her home.
I thought it was interesting how she, like Miss Sherry said, they fight, you know, like until they draw blood. But at the same time, there was that, I hope I'm not giving, I think this was in the pages that we read. There was that scene where she really did not want them to be cursing. She didn't want them to pick up any bad words from their uncle. I thought that was so interesting compared to the fact that they are throwing death blows on each other, you know, but no cursing allowed. I thought that was interesting. how she really likes to keep up these appearances, you know, out in public. I don't want you knowing those dirty words or repeating them.
In addition, that's not helped by the fact they were living behind the bar, right? When they moved to Santurce. And she's
Yeah.
telling them, you know, don't repeat the curses you hear the men say, and then the women come in, and then the conversation really takes a turn. Don't repeat that either. Dodge and vomit in the morning and all that other stuff. So there's all these very, you know, undue or unwanted influences that are going to penetrate one way or the other that the mom has to kind of fight off.
Yes, yes.
It's
Brian,
maintaining a sanity, some kind of sanity amongst the chaos.
yeah.